everybody, and welcome to My Non-Chemical Romance. I'm Heather Kelly, and we're working on the first part of making your sourdough loaf today. I am starting by milling my own whole wheat flour from wheat berries. I do this because I like to make my bread as fresh as I possibly can make it. You're more than welcome to use store-bought whole wheat flour, and you'll still get great results, way better than any store-bought bread that you can find. Most sourdoughs on the market, sourdough bread on the market today, are truly not even sourdough. The manufacturers have just added sour flavor to make it seem like sourdough. They haven't gone through the actual process of creating sourdough like we are today. And once your bread is done, you'll be able to tell by texture alone just how different store-bought sourdough bread is to actual true sourdough bread. When I start my sourdough loaves, I first feed my sourdough starter. I do that by taking 2 tablespoons of my sourdough starter, and then I add 50 grams of whole wheat flour and 50 grams of water. You might ask why only 2 tablespoons worth of the starter, and that's just because you want your starter to be as healthy as possible. And if there's too much competition for food, then your starter won't thrive as much. You want to have a very active starter to work its magic for your bread. I also suggest using whole wheat flour to feed your starter because it's more nourishing than regular white flour. By doing this, you're going to see even better results coming out of that hungry sourdough starter. Your starter will sit for 4 hours on the counter, and during that time it should double in size. That's a great indicator that you have a good, healthy, active starter that's ready to go and that's going to make an awesome loaf. The next step is to take your bowl and add flour and water. This step is called Autolyse, and it's a super fancy term for something super simple. All this means is that you're going to combine your flour and your water and let them sit for a few hours to hydrate the dough. It also begins to develop the gluten for you, which is awesome. You'll actually notice after our 4-hour Autolyse is done how different the texture of your dough will be from when you mix it here at this point. Just remember, it's really not a big deal. It's just a fancy name, so don't let it freak you out. Bread making is simple. It's something that our ancestors have done for years. So you can do this and you're amazing. So what I've done here is I've added 600 grams of wheat flour and 600 grams of white flour. And then I add anywhere from 1,000 grams to 1,200 grams of water. And that all just depends on how easily I can stir the dough. This is what is called baking by feel. In my opinion, it's one of the best ways to bake because it doesn't matter what the altitude is or what the humidity is. It shouldn't make a difference in your loaf if you can understand how your dough is supposed to feel. So the dough should feel like you can stir it with a spatula or a spoon without feel like you're going to break the spatula. You should feel like there's a little bit of muscle involved in stirring the flour and water together, but it shouldn't be so dense that you can't, and that you feel like your spoon is going to break, and that the only thing that you can do to get this dough going is to throw it on the counter and knead it. We are not looking for that dense of a dough for this process. If your dough isn't soft enough, just add in a little bit more water. Try 50 grams at a time. Stir that in and see how it feels. If it's still stiff, add another 50 grams and keep doing this until you've reached a point where you've got the right consistency. It's not too thin like muffin batter, but it's also not going to be dense like typical bread dough usually is. For you beginners out there, if you're going to err on the side of dense or watery, err on the side of more dense. It's going to make it easier for the rest of the process later down the road when you shape your loaves and you let them rise. The biggest thing about dough hydration, which is what we're doing here, is that is what makes your dough have those big open holes. It's called an open crumb. And the more water you add, the more open crumb you're going to get. But you also need to make sure that you develop the gluten enough to hold those crumbs together. Otherwise, you're just going to get a pancake of a loaf, and we don't want that to happen. So also while you're stirring, make sure to be thorough and incorporate all the flour. I've done this many times where I thought I stirred in all my flour together with the water, only to find later when I put in some other ingredients on the next steps that there were dry pockets, and you can't really take back 4 hours of sitting. If this happens to you, it's not the end of the world. Just mix it into the rest of the dough, add a bit more water if you need to. And that's it for this phase.